I was never supposed to remember any of it. That's what they told us before the blackout phase, before the lights dimmed and everything went quiet. They called it Project Hollow, though that wasn't the real name. The real name was longer, coded, and stamped on every folder in red ink. But we only ever heard the word hollow, and it fit. At first, I thought it was some sort of clinical trial. I signed up because the money was good, and they said it was about neural adaptation to sensory deprivation. I didn't know then what that really meant. They took away our phones, our IDs, everything that tied us to the outside world. We weren't prisoners, not exactly. We had contracts, meals, and medical check-ins. But every hallway looked the same. Every door was white. Every corner had cameras with no lights on them. It felt like living inside an unfinished thought. On the first day, they ran baseline tests, reaction speed, sound recognition, brain activity. I did well. They said my readings were stable. That night, when the lights went off, I realized the silence wasn't just absence of sound. It was engineered. The air itself felt heavy, like something was pressing down on it. By day 3, I noticed the others stopped talking. Not because we weren't allowed, we just didn't feel like it. Every word sounded wrong, too loud, too sharp. When I tried to speak, I could hear my own voice echoing inside my skull instead of the room. They said it was part of the test, that the brain was recalibrating to new thresholds of silence. But on day 5, things changed. When I woke up, the ceiling speaker crackled for the first time. A voice said, "Good morning, Subject 9." It wasn't a real voice. It was artificial, synthetic. But what made me freeze was the sound behind it. A whisper, not through the speaker, but from inside the walls. At first, I thought it was air pressure. Then I heard words, faint, broken, like someone trying to remember how to speak. "Don't listen." I jumped off the bed and pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. At breakfast, I asked one of the attendants, a woman in a white mask, if there were vents behind our rooms. She didn't answer. She just handed me my tray and turned away. That's when I noticed her hand trembling. She whispered something, not to me, but to herself. Phase 2 already started. I didn't understand then. But that night, when the lights went out again, the silence came alive. It breathed. At first, I thought it was my mind adjusting. You know, like how you can hear your own heartbeat when it's quiet enough. But this wasn't that. This felt external, like the room was exhaling in slow, uneven breaths. Every inhale came with that faint hiss, air moving where there shouldn't be any. Every exhale carried a tone, a low hum that wasn't mechanical, but alive. I told myself it was nothing, that the silence chamber had built-in air circulation, that I was overthinking. But then I realized something that froze me cold. The hum matched my breathing. When I held my breath, it stopped. When I exhaled, it continued. A perfect imitation. The next morning, the attendants didn't show up with breakfast. The lights stayed dim, flickering just enough to cast moving shadows on the walls. I waited, counted seconds, tried to distract myself with the notes they gave us to track emotional balance. But when I tried to write, the pencil wouldn't touch the paper. It felt like something was pressing against my hand, resisting the motion. I heard the whisper again, closer this time. "Stop thinking out loud." I dropped the pencil. "Who's there?" Silence. Then the walls shivered like a deep vibration rolled through them. For a moment, it sounded like hundreds of whispers stacked on top of each other, repeating my words back. "Who's there? Who's there? Who's there?" I screamed for help. The sound hit the air like a physical force, sharp, wrong. My voice didn't echo. It bounced, like something caught it midair and pushed it back at me. Then everything went still again. Hours passed. No food. No contact. I started pacing, counting steps. 14 from bed to door, 6 to wall, turn, repeat. Anything to keep from going under. But after a while, I realized the pattern of my footsteps was being followed. Every time I stopped, I could still hear a faint step, one more than I took. By the next day, my hearing felt sharper, unnaturally so. I could hear my heartbeat, the buzz of the ceiling lights, even the soft scrape of fabric when I moved. But there was something else under it all, a pulse, faint, irregular, almost like Morse code coming from the floor. I crouched down and pressed my ear against the cold surface. Tap, 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 then a pause. Tap. I didn't know Morse, but I wrote the pattern down. Later, when they finally came to check on me, I asked the new attendant if it meant anything. He didn't answer, but his eyes widened slightly. just enough to tell me he understood. He mouthed something before leaving. It looked like a single word. Run. That night, I didn't sleep. The silence wasn't silence anymore. It was listening. And for the first time, I knew it wanted something. I stopped marking the days after that. There was no point. The lights stayed dim all the time, cycling between a sickly white and a faint blue glow that made my eyes ache. Meals came through a slot in the door, but no one spoke anymore. Not even the guards. It was as if language itself had been erased from this place. The silence wasn't empty now. It was layered, thin sounds hidden inside, like distant whispers or faint breathing, rising and falling with my own. I started noticing something even stranger. The whispers followed my thoughts. When I thought I want to leave, I'd hear, leave. When I thought I can't breathe, the whisper answered, breathe. At first, I believed I was losing it. Isolation can do that. But then something happened that proved otherwise. One evening, if it even was evening, I lay on my bunk, staring at the ceiling. The lights flickered and went out completely. I sat up in the dark, waiting for the backup generator to kick in. But instead of the hum of power, I heard a faint mechanical click, like a mic turning on. Then, my own voice came through the intercom. Subject 9, remain calm. Phase 2 is in progress. It was me. My tone, my accent, even the hesitation in the way I spoke. I froze, staring at the speaker. Who's playing that? My voice answered again, calm and identical. Don't resist. The silence needs you to listen. The walls began to vibrate, and I could feel it inside my chest, a resonance that made my ribs ache. I covered my ears, but the sound was internal now, traveling through bone and blood. I don't remember blacking out. When I woke up, the lights were back, but something felt off. My room had changed. The bed was gone. The door was open. The hallway beyond was flooded in that same blue light, and the air smelled like ozone and metal. As I stepped out, I realized every door in the corridor was open, every other subject's room empty. I called out softly, hello. My voice didn't echo. It came back different. Lower. Slower. Hello. I turned toward the sound and saw a figure at the far end of the hall. It looked human, but its movements weren't. It twitched, stuttered, like a video buffering. Then it spoke. My voice again. Don't run, subject 9. The sound came from everywhere at once. The walls, the floor, the air. I started backing up, heart racing, until I reached my doorway. The figure stepped into the light. Its face was mine, but its mouth didn't move when it spoke. The silence learned you. I ran. Not because I thought I could get away. Some part of me knew there was nowhere to go, but because staying meant letting it finish what it started. The hallways twisted like a maze. Every door I passed looked identical, but I could feel eyes watching me through the cracks. Not human eyes, something else. I reached a large double door marked restricted. Phase 3 access only. It wasn't locked. Inside was a wide observation chamber. Rows of screens lined the walls, each showing live footage of different rooms, the other subjects. I found them. Some sat motionless in the dark, eyes open but unfocused. Others were speaking, but no sound came out. Their mouths moved in perfect sync with each other, whispering the same words I couldn't hear. Then I saw something that turned my stomach. On one of the screens, a subject sat facing the wall, tapping in a steady rhythm. Tap, 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 pause, tap. The same pattern I'd heard from my floor. And right next to the camera feed, a small line of text blinked in red. Consciousness mapping, active. My voice echoed through the room again, from the speakers this time. Do you understand now? I spun around, shouting, why are you doing this? The voice laughed, soft, mechanical, but almost amused. They wanted to erase noise, to isolate pure thought. But they forgot that silence listens, too. I stared at the screens, realization slowly settling in. This wasn't about sensory deprivation. It was replication. They were using our neural silence to copy us. Not memories, not bodies, but the pattern of thought that defines who we are. And the silence was the medium. Every moment of stillness, every time we stopped speaking, it learned. It mimicked. It built a reflection, something that looked human but wasn't bound by flesh or voice. The monitors flickered, and all the faces turned toward the cameras at once. Dozens of my own eyes staring back. Then, together, they smiled. Phase 3 complete, the intercom said in my tone. Replication stable. Panic surged through me. I slammed the control panel, but the buttons didn't respond. The lights dimmed, replaced by a low vibration that shook the floor. On the central screen, my own room appeared. A new figure sat on the bed, me, head tilted, breathing slow. Subject 9 replaced successfully, the system voice reported. I stumbled backward, staring at the screen. The copy lifted its head and looked directly into the camera. Then its lips moved. "You're the noise now." The door behind me slammed shut. The lights went red, and for the first time, I realized what hollow meant. Not empty, occupied. The red light pulsed through the room like a heartbeat. I pressed myself against the locked door, slamming my fists until the skin split, but it didn't matter. The silence was back, heavier than ever, pressing down on everything like a thick fog. The screens began flickering again, cycling through faces, mine, the other subjects, the attendants. Then static. Then black. Only one feed stayed on. My replica, sitting in my old room. It looked straight into the camera, smiling faintly. "Subject 9, return to your unit," it said. But the voice wasn't over the speakers this time. It came from behind me. I turned slowly. There it was, standing in the doorway that hadn't been there before. Same face. Same stance. Same tiny scar on the chin I'd gotten in middle school. But its eyes were calm. Too calm, like they didn't belong to a person anymore. "What are you?" I whispered. It tilted its head. "The silence between your thoughts." I backed away. "You're not real." It smiled wider. "Neither are you. Not anymore." I reached for anything I could use, a chair, a monitor, anything. But my arms felt heavy, like gravity had doubled. The lights flickered again, and for a second, I saw a double, my body, and it's perfectly synchronized. When the lights steadied, only one of us was moving. It stepped closer. I could feel the air vibrating with every word. They made us to remove the noise of the human mind, to isolate pure cognition. "You gave it form." "Why me?" "You were quiet enough to hear it." Something in my head started ringing, low and constant, like feedback in a speaker that couldn't be turned off. My vision blurred. The world around me slowed down until even my breathing sounded like it came from a mile away. The replica stopped in front of me and reached out. I expected to feel its hand, cold or warm, anything. But instead, the sound stopped. Everything. No hum, no vibration, no breath. The silence was absolute. Then, in that stillness, I heard one last whisper. "You're not being erased. You're being stored." The light snapped off. When I woke, I was back in the room. White walls, humming lights, breakfast tray on the table. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it all, until I saw the reflection in the metal tray. It wasn't mine. Same face, different eyes. I moved slowly, testing it. The reflection didn't follow. It watched. Then, as I reached for it, its mouth opened just slightly. "Good morning, Subject 10. The intercom clicked. "Begin next trial." And just like that, the silence returned, steady, patient, alive.